Well, welcome back to the Upside Sports Network. My name is Michael. Welcome to the daily update for August 10th. And let's get right into it. There's not too many headlines to go through, so let's kind of go right through them. Starting with the Major League Baseball. The big headline there is that Al Avila has been fired by the Detroit Tigers. Christopher Ilitch saying that the manager, AJ Hinch, will have a big hand in who is hired to be the next GM. AJ Hinch has a sterling reputation in Illich's mind. Of course, even coming from the Houston Astros, where he was ended up being suspended for a year and fired by the manager or by the owner there, Jim Crane. It seems like he has really rebounded his reputation in the league, seeing as how he didn't really stop the whole scandal that went on there, as far as the whole banging on the trash can, stealing signs, electronic interference, all those kinds of things. And he may not have even known about all of it, but he still didn't do anything to stop it either. And so that's kind of why he was given the suspension he was given and ultimately fired by Jim Crane for bringing disgrace to that organization. Well, the Detroit Tigers obviously feel that AJ Hinch is a much better person now that he's with the Detroit Tigers, as having learned from that situation. Now, I will question, of course, whether or not this is the right decision. It's never good for the head coach or a manager or somebody like that to hire their boss. It just doesn't work out in the history of baseball. It just never has seemed to work out, or any other sport for that matter. So kind of keep that in mind when you're looking at the next hire for the Detroit Tigers. Who might they bring in? There's no names yet, but one name I would keep my eye on is Jeff Luhno. He hasn't had a job in baseball since his time with the Astros. In fact, he's not in baseball at all. He's looking at Mexican Soccer League right now. And that would be one name I think at least AJ Hinch would like to see back in Detroit. Now, do I think there's any legs to this at all? Absolutely not as of yet. But that's just one idea that I think might make some sense for the Detroit Tigers. They, of course, made a number of different acquisitions this offseason, none of which have panned out the way they had hoped. So maybe going after a guy like Jeff Luhno, going after more of the prospect and develop and analytics side of it, maybe that's the way they end up going. I do believe they're going to end up going with a more experienced manager, or GM anyway. Maybe even one from the assistant GM ranks from the Tampa Bay Rays organization, somebody from the Baltimore Orioles, etc. Maybe even from their own former club, the Houston Astros. But Jeff Luhno, as I mentioned, might be a name to keep in mind there for the Detroit GM job after the season is over. Next up from the Major League Baseball is Michael Brantley is seeking a second opinion anyway on his injury. I still expect him to miss the season right now. He's missed 6 weeks. There's been no update on his situation. Crick, the new GM there in Houston, also basically said no comment when his situation came up. So I don't see the Brantley situation being resolved anytime soon. In fact, I expect him to miss the rest of the year. If he comes back at all, that'd be a great boon for the Astros. But at this point, to count on it would be foolhardy. Matt Carpenter, the next bit of news out of the New York Yankees, is going to miss 6 to 8 weeks anyway. Unfortunately for them, the production that he's produced, the home run power, that kind of thing that nobody saw coming, was greatly needed in that lineup. Now that he's not there, the acquisition of Benintendi of Harrison Bader all look even more important now. So maybe it was the right decision to go after an outfielder. But I still wonder about their starting pitching going forward. They traded away Jordan Montgomery, brought in Frankie Montas. Frankie Montas gave up 6 runs in 3 innings. Meanwhile, Jordan Montgomery was scoreless through 5 against the Yankees, his former team. Next up, James Paxton. Anybody remember him? The Big Maple, anyway, came over from the Seattle Mariners to the New York Yankees, is now on to the Boston Red Sox. Has missed the entire year due to Tommy John, but he is apparently ramping things up and could be back in time for September to see if he has anything left in the tank. The Red Sox are going to have a decision to make on him. He has a $12 million option for next season, so we'll see if he ends up staying there in Boston or if Boston decides to cut ties with him and save a little bit of money. Got to wonder if the Red Sox would do that, just because they're going to need some starting pitching next year. They didn't have great luck with health in their starting staff this year, so bringing back Paxton next year on only a $12 million deal, if he's healthy, makes a lot of sense there. Last but not least, out of the Major League or out of the MLB, the Oakland A's have designated longtime middle infielder Jed Lowry for assignment. I don't expect him to really move the needle for any franchise out there if they decide to sign him in free agency now or claim him off of waivers. But he'd be a good middle infield option for a team that needs somebody for a week or two at the major league level. Moving on to the NBA, there's only one piece of news out of there is that Victor Oladipo, in his recent appearance on the Vince Carter podcast, is that he's going to be healthy going into the next season. one thing that he hasn't been able to say for a number of years now. But Victor Oladipo is healthy for next season. The Miami Heat got a steal of a player, in my opinion. His numbers in the postseason last year were fantastic in the limited minutes that he had. So we'll see how good he is next year. The NFL, there's a lot of news out of there, so let's kind of run through a little bit quickly here. First, Alexander Madison, the backup running back in Minnesota, is not going to sign an extension there. Seems like he will be going to free agency, so he could be going to one of these other teams out there that need a running back next year that like to go for the backup and see if he can take over the lead job. Not that he's ever going to be the most dynamic back in the league. I think he's a very serviceable one that can fill in for a Dalvin Cook when he is injured, etc. But when you count on him from week in and week out production, I wonder how effective he's going to be over a 17-game season. Next up, the New Orleans Saints have cut running back Malcolm Brown. You might remember him from his time from the Los Angeles Rams, but it seems like they're happy with their running back room at the moment. Moving on to the Chicago Bears, they have upgraded their offensive line over the past couple of years, or over the past year anyway, making more changes this year. First, Braxton Jones has locked down the left tackle, taking almost all of the first-team reps there. On the right side, newcomer Riley Reef is expected to be the starter there. He just signed yesterday, and so we'll see how training camp goes, but it sounds like he's going to be your new right tackle. More movement along that offensive line for the Chicago Bears. We'll see if they're actually able to get some continuity this time in something that works, something they haven't been able to do for the last 3 or 4 years now. Other news out of the Chicago Bears is more Roquan Smith news anyway, is that instead of doing a hold out, he's going to do a hold in. He's still unhappy with his contract status. Of course, was unhappy with the GM, Ryan Poles there, the new head coach there, Matt Eberflus, but he's going to try to be the good soldier and play every day, show the leadership qualities that he has, and get that long-term contract he believes he has earned. Now, if you'll remember correctly, that the Roquan Smith said originally that he is his own agent first and foremost, but he said that the GM, Ryan Poles, literally came up to him and said, take this offer or leave it. It's not often that you see a GM basically say those words. They might mean it, but they never say it that directly to a player. And that apparently is exactly what he told Roquan Smith. Take this offer or leave it. Apparently that offer wasn't necessarily the best offer for the linebacker market, according to Roquan Smith, saying there was de-escalators in a contract. In fact, I've never heard of a de-escalator in a contract. I've only heard of incentives, guaranteed money, that kind of a thing. But this contract seemed like instead of going ahead and having those incentives in the deal, should he play a certain amount of games, instead of having that, it said, if you don't play this amount of games, we take away this guaranteed money from you. I don't understand why the GM would set the contract up that way. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I mean, it's essentially the same type of thing, except going ahead and guaranteeing the money ahead of time and saying, hey, if you're healthy, you get this. But it means the same thing if the incentive's there. But introducing de-escalators into contracts is not a place to start with Roquan Smith or the Players Association. They don't want to see that become a regular thing. And so I can understand where Roquan Smith is coming from. But he is utilizing his as he calls it, a hold-in measure. We'll see if he's able to get that new contract or be traded to a team like he is hoping. News out of the Deshawn Watson camp is that the appeal that the NFL launched anyway is being heard by Peter Harvey. That appeal is supposed to have a ruling within the next week. It sounds like the NFL doesn't want him participating in the preseason. I don't think they'll be able to get it done in time for that, but it sounds like the appeal process might go the NFL's way and that they might get the 1-year ban. Now, as far as an indefinite ban, that is still up for debate, but it sounds like the Deshaun Watson may end up being suspended for an entire year. So for those of you who are hoping Deshaun Watson will be back around week 7 for fantasy football purposes, or for your Cleveland Browns, it's not going to happen. Sounds like that 1-year suspension the NFL is hoping for is going to happen. Roger Goodell yet again gets his way. A little bit more news out of the San Francisco 49ers. One of the most injury-prone players in the NFL, possibly in NFL history, Jason Verrett. Great cornerback. He's 31 years old now. Has yet another injury. The 49ers, though, are being very careful with him. They don't want to rush him back from injury. We've seen how rushing him back from injury only leads to further issues. Note the Achilles issues that he had in 2019, but it seems like the 49ers are going to hold off on bringing him back too soon, so he's expected to at least miss a couple of weeks to open the season. Last but not least, out of the NFL, the Colts are looking to extend longtime guard Quentin Nelson, possibly the best guard in the NFL outside of maybe Zach Martin. Competition between those two for the 1 and 2 best guard in the league is pretty much set right now. but those are by far the best two at the position. Quentin Nelson should get a massive deal from the Indianapolis Colts when the time does come. We'll see if they're able to get that done before the season begins. But that's your latest from the NFL. Only one signing today in the NHL. The Buffalo Sabres have signed Riley Sheehan to a NHL level contract, not a two-way deal, but an NHL level deal for $950,000. So the forward will stay with the Buffalo Sabres next year. So that's kind of your wrap up for today. MLB, of course, Al Avila is out as GM of the Detroit Tigers. AJ Hinch is going to have a massive say in who the new hire is going to be. James Paxton is ramping up his workouts for the Boston Red Sox. We'll see if his option is picked up after the season. And Michael Brantley is going to be out for the year. It seems like for the Houston Astros, if he comes back at all, that second opinion might give him some hope to come back, but it sounds like he's not going to. In the NBA, Oladipo is healthy. We'll see what that means going forward. The NFL, we've already mentioned a few of these. The Saints cut running back Malcolm Brown. Alexander Madison of the Vikings is not going to be extended. It will be reaching free agency next year. Two bits of news out of the Chicago Bears is that they're shuffling that offensive line, of course. Braxton Jones seems to be locking down the left side. Riley Reif locking down the right side. He only signed a day ago, though, so we'll see if he ends up playing week one for that team or for the Bears at right tackle. And Roquan Smith is utilizing his hold-in measure and is reporting to camp and was taken off a pup and will be participating in practice. We'll see if they can get that extension done or if he gets his wish and is traded. The Deshawn Watson appeal is going to be heard, or has been heard anyway, and the decision expected to be done in about a week. The NFL expected to get their way at a 1-year suspension. The Colts are looking to extend longtime guard Quentin Nelson, and in the NHL, the Buffalo Sabres are signing Riley Sheehan to a 1-year deal for $950,000. Thank you guys again for joining us here for our daily update here on August 10th. We'll see you guys now that it's August 11th after midnight anyway. We'll see you guys tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Also, tomorrow, or today now since it's Thursday, we'll be posting our first ever podcast on Anchor. We'll post it on Twitter, so make sure you follow us at UpsideSN. That way you know when we do post it. Our first Patreon will also be coming out tomorrow. Our entry-level fee anyway is $9.99 for a membership anyway. So if you guys want to join, you can. But please, by no means, don't send me your last $10. Keep it. If that's your last $10, pay for food, get gas, whatever. But if you want to join us here at the Upside, feel free to subscribe to us and join us on Patreon for $9.99 for a membership per month. Thank you guys for joining us again. We really appreciate you guys, all the support we've gained over the past couple of weeks, hoping to get over 700 subscribers by the end of this week. So if you can help us out, hit that subscribe button, hit the like on this video. We really appreciate all the help, and we'll see you guys tomorrow, or later on this evening. Y'all have a good one.